Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, according to your time zones. So when you start for the USMLE, now, in case if you do not have resources, you do not have enough funds, do you think this is possible to pursue the USMLE? Yes, obviously, this is like I would say yes. Even if you have no money, yes, you can pursue. You just want to see that what works for you and what resources do you need, and if you really need those. In case if you do not have enough funds, and then there are a lot of like platforms, like even our platform IMG Helping Hands, we do provide a lot of services like without any fee. Like we have a USMLE Step 1 preparation program. We're not charging anything, just to help people, uh, because there are a lot of people who are not able to afford. And we do understand if we compare the dollar difference from the other currencies, there's a lot of differences. I know. So this is like our way of giving it back to you guys. You guys can start with the USMLE Step 1 and be clear and concise in your goal. I don't think so. It's going to take more than 6 months. Anything holding you back from taking USMLE Step 1 exam in more than 6 months is something which I would label as the toxic, I guess, as toxicity. It's something that is holding you back from achieving your goals. So you have to say no to the toxicities, and you have to achieve your goal for the USMLE Step 1 within the 6 months. And for so USMLE Step 2, most likely if you are able to take in 6 months, in the next 6 months you will be able to take. So the range varies. It can be from like 1 year to 2 year for the people for taking all of the exams. I myself spent like a 1.5 year for the whole journey for whole of like for the two exam for sorry for the three exams, the USMLE Step 1, Step 2, and the OET exam. And the Step 3 I took last year when I was in my second year of residency. Now another question is, what if I have to do it very, very differently? What I would do is, when I'm gonna if I like the day I took my Step 2 exam, I would not stop studying. I would start studying Step 3, because if I would have taken the USMLE Step 3 exam within 2 to 3 months after Step 2, I would have scored more as compared to what I did now. The reason is because Step 3 is a continuation of Step 2. And this is one of the advice which I would like to give to everyone. A lot of people get burned out by like when they are done with the USMLE Step 1, 2, and the OET exam. But I think there are like just 2 to 3 more months, and then I would recommend take your Step 3 as soon as possible. Since now the Step 1 is pass and fail. Like when we applied, it was not pass and fail. We used to have scores. But now a common under question would be like how the programs are going to decide just on the basis of one exam. So Step 3 will be very important in considering the applications. If someone have taken Step 3 already, have a good score, they will be privileged. It all also depends on from program to program, from residency program to another residency program. But yeah, a lot of residency program directors recommend taking Step 3. Like I know personally, like a lot of program directors who see if the person has taken Step 3, then they do consider that applicant above any other applicant. Now comes the score. Like when you are done with your USMLE journey, like a lot of people, like before even score, like a lot of people ask about how to plan things ahead of time, like how to do research, like how to do electives. So normally, if you are in this journey, in order to match, you need to have a clear and concise vision. You don't have to be deviated by seeing other opportunities. By this, what I mean is, if you are planning to take your USMLE exam, just focus on USMLE Step 1 exam. Take it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the only thing I would recommend you while you're studying for USMLE Step 1 exam is start learning research. Because these days, you are not just becoming physicians, you are becoming physician scientists. You are creating an impact for the future generations. Even in residency, Like we do have to complete a couple of research projects, couple of QI projects in order to graduate from the residency program. So learning research as soon as possible is one of the advice which I would like to give to everyone. Now, the blunder which people make is they ask their friends and some other friends to add their name in the research paper by getting a ghost authorship. I would highly discourage this because any residency program can easily tell by just reviewing your article that if this is something you did or if this is something you just added your name, you might be paid someone to get a ghost authorship. The ghost authorship is going to hurt you. So any authorship you're getting should be like you should work on that. Might be even if you did you did participate, might be in the introduction part, might be in the reference part. If you're complying with ICMJ guidelines, then this means you can explain in the interview that okay, this was the research and why did you do it and why did that matter to you. But if you did a good calculate, if you have a ghost authorship, there is no way that you can explain well. You can explain well, but your body language is not going to explain well. And the program directors are very, very adept in knowing the body language. Like any fake experience can easily be identified in the first 10 minutes of the interview. Now, when you're done with the USMLE Step 1 exam, meanwhile, you need to network with the US based physicians. There are multiple ways to network. The most refined way, which I would recommend to everyone, is come to the conferences. I think a lot of people who come to the conferences, they're able to secure more interviews. And even a few of my friends, like in front of my eyes, like I introduced them to the AAFP conference. They did go there last time and then they gave the feedback that they have received like 3 to 4 more interviews as compared to any other person. In fact, any interview they received were like the connection they made with the residency program in the conferences, they were able to receive the more interviews because these days, since the interviews are virtual and you cannot tell a lot about a person in the virtual interview. So residency programs, what they do is when they see people in the conferences and they see the if you guys are proactive, you are connecting the program, they say, okay, let's invite this person for the interview because we have seen this person and it's easy to rely on a person who you have talked to or like by face to face. And another very, very important factor is from June onwards, from June to September, what happens is there are a lot of residency virtual houses. Like most of the residency program, they do a webinar like I'm doing for you guys today. They do a webinar, and that webinar is attended by like around 200 people, almost 200 people, more or less or more. And what people do is now, in order to reiterate the importance of this, I would simulate this with how many applications a program receive. On average, every program receive around about 4 to 5 thousand of applications every season. Now, out of 4 or 5 thousand people, if you suppose that you are among those 200 people who attended their webinar, do you think they're going to give you the importance of giving or considering your application for the interview? Yes, the answer is yes, absolutely yes. So this just one small act of yours can give you an extra leverage in the whole journey. I myself like received like 3 to 4 interviews just because I was in touch with those programs. I was able to get into the program interviews just because I was very proactive asking about when are you gonna organize the webinar or when are you guys doing the virtual houses. I'm very much interested. Even another example, which is like one of the program interview I received, there was no such program that existed. I just emailed the hospital that I'm interested in doing an observership. They said we don't have any observership, but we are filing a application for a residency program, and you're welcome to apply. And when the season came, I did email them, did your residency program got accreditation? They said, no, not yet, but most likely we're going to get in November. I emailed them. So in November, they emailed me back, okay, so you can apply. And then I applied at that point, and they gave me the interview. So this is how you can get an extra leverage by just connecting to people and then emailing people. So the conference, since I mentioned about the research, one of the networking way can be present your abstracts or articles like when they are like published, or when you have completed your abstract, you can send it to the conferences, and if that was qualified, you can go and present, and then you can make connections in the conferences. This is another way of the networking. Now, the like another way, which I would not recommend really, but it can help it helps a few people, like a cold emailing, like people start emailing like 200 programs and then see who replies. Now, there is a better way to do that for the, I don't consider that cold emailing. If let's suppose there are 200 programs, I'm going to deep dive into every program. I'm going to sort of scrutinize like 10 to like 15 to 20 programs who I think I can go there according to my credentials. Then I'm going to review each and everything about their preceptors, their website, and then I'm going to compile a list of the attributes which I'm going to mention in the email. Then I'm going to write a very personalized email to that specific person. There's no way he's not going to reply. This has helped me a lot, even when I reach out to like other multiple like hospital CEOs or other directors, like senators, like other people. Like what I don't do the cold emailing. I deep dive into that person's personality and their what they're doing, and then I write specific attribute which I like about him, and then how that specific thing can be beneficial in my favor, or how I can be helpful to that person. So this is how I receive reply almost from everyone whenever I email to you. Now the you're gonna see what you're gonna do is you're gonna a lot of seniors to you they're gonna recommend that, okay, go ahead, cold email 200 people. You're gonna receive like 5 to 6 replies. You can do so, but that's not very helpful. The only thing that I think that can be helpful is if you are deep diving into their like whole journey and then the whole program, and then writing the specific attributes so they actually reply. So this one act can easily discriminate you from like distinguish you from other thousands of people who are sending the cold email. Now, another blunder which people make is they say, okay, they ask us, even a lot of people text me that I need a template for the email, or I need something. How can I reach out to the what should I write in the email? We do have some templates, and that template is not that you should copy paste and then send it to the program, because the this world like the US is large, but the world is small. By that what I mean is when you email one template, specific template to a program, so this means that there are a couple of thousands of other people who are also sending the same email to that specific program. And the program can easily tell that, okay, it was just a copy paste generic email, and then they are not gonna reply to that. So write a personalized email. You can get guidance from the templates, but write a personalized email when you reach out to the people. Now coming back to the word towards the USMLE, like when you are starting the USMLE journey, you're very enthusiastic. But once you are done, like I think 5 to 6 months, then it's the time like when you start burning out, and that's completely normal. In order to come up with a solution for that, we have introduced our space, like IMG Helping Hand Step One program, where anyone who is feeling burned out, they can join our program, and then they will be able to get a peer space, or where their mentor is teaching, giving a crash course, and then just to keep track and just to keep going like a train. We are also going to introduce like step two program, might be in the next few months, but right now we are giving like a free USMLE step one program to everyone, so you guys can have, you can just have benefit from our organization. Now, meanwhile, you are learning research. Now, what happens is like a lot of people make a mistake by learning research once they're done with the USMLE step one, two electives and everything. And then They are publishing like around 4 to 5 articles, whatever, in the months of like June, July, August when they apply for residency. What I would recommend is, in order to show the interest that you really had the interest in research, you should spread this out in the whole journey rather than doing one specific uh, timeline, like 3 to 4 months. Try to not complete all of the program in all those 3 to 4 months. Try to spread this out. Might be you are doing step one preparation. You can learn research, publish like meanwhile, while step two, another one or two. And then after like once you're done with it, 2 or 3 projects, you are more adept and then you will be able to do like a lot of projects side by side.